So Magashule is jumping like a tennis ball, flying high like an eagle, floating like a butterfly, and is as fit as a fiddle, he says. He says he's also ready to prove that he is the victim of a political witch hunt. Magashule is, of course, facing very serious charges in Bloemfontein. Those are corruption charges, but that matter, of course, is only returning to court in some months' time. But let's talk now about his tussle with the governing party, which comes to court tomorrow. I'm joined by political analyst and senior research associate with the Institute for Global Dialogue, Sanusha Naidu. Sanusha, good evening to you. Once you clear away that metaphor soup, what did you take out of the message coming from Magashule this evening?
Good evening, Sally, and good evening to the listeners. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of mixed metaphors in that whole analogy of the image. But I think the general sense is that he's fit and ready to fight. That's the general message that he's sending out, and that all of those kinds of metaphors that he was trying to create the image around is that he's not going down, he's not going anywhere slowly. He's not going to be basically giving up in any kind of boxing analogy that he was using, and more importantly, he's up to standing up to the powers that essentially are trying to displace him and essentially push him aside from the ANC. So all of that kind of tells you that he's trying to indicate that he is ready for the fight, no matter what kind of blows, or whether it's a bantamweight or a featherweight or a heavyweight kind of bout, that he's ready to take it on.
So, interestingly, because at the same time, obviously, you know, our reporter, Sipho Mandla, intrepid as he is, went looking for him in Paris, found him, because that, of course, is Magashule's hometown, and got that interview. But the ANC was due to hold a media briefing where we understand that they were going to discuss tomorrow's case, but they've cancelled that. Do you think that's significant?
Yeah, I think they're possibly thinking about this in the way that, again, you know, a lot of this in the public domain, in the media space, gets caught up in different types of interpretations, lost in translation. I think it's a very strategic move on the part of Magashule to actually give the interview, to take it to the ANC and to say to them, you know, I'm ready for you all. Whether you see it in this way or you see it in that way, I'm ready for you all, and I'm ready to take it on. I think by not having the press conference this afternoon, or cancelling the press conference, and to wait, possibly strategically to wait after what happens at the court and how that plays out, again, is something that they will be trying to, the ANC and the top five will be trying to think about how they go forward in terms of not letting on or not responding, whether it's a deliberate tactic or whether it's something that they feel they strategically need to maneuver around, is again the optics and the way the optics play out in the public domain. But at the same time, the challenge actually now is whether what happens at the court case, what kind of decision is taken. Will we see another postponement and a new date to hear the case be set forward by the presiding judge? And more importantly, you know, what does this mean for Magashule? Because if it is then another date that is set aside to hear the case, it could very well be that we come towards July, end of July, beginning of August, where he has to fight two cases. And the more this tends to, from a logistics perspective, from an institutional perspective, and from his perspective, the more there's a delay in the cases, it makes it much more difficult for him to actually rouse and go out and try and mobilize support in terms of the local government election and even beyond. But that, again, hasn't stopped Magashule from appearing on public platforms, even though he has been suspended. And the terms of that suspension letter suggest that he cannot be engaging in any kind of public meeting or a public platform where he's talking to, where he's actually in a context of talking about some kind of discussion around the ANC or a public engagement, etc. That hasn't deterred him. So again, that's another avenue to think about.
And, of course, the ANC cancelling that briefing, one of the criticisms is, you know, the ANC's got all these internal issues to deal with, when, in fact, they should be focused on the biggest challenge, which is COVID-19 and the economic crisis the country is fighting. So, ultimately, is Magashule the one who will be the biggest loser? We already know about divisions within the ANC. Ultimately, is Magashule the one with the most to lose here?
I think from where he stands, he definitely sees it as him being, if this situation is as expedited, if the legal battles and the legal court challenges are not expedited because he's demanding that it all be expedited, then he sees himself as the biggest loser. He does actually see this as a way to essentially displace him from the party and essentially move him out of the party and eventually mute him in various ways, trying to basically crowd him out. And hopefully that, because he doesn't want to leave the party, he doesn't see himself as somebody who's going to, be a non-ANC member. But then, things change in a flash. I think for the ANC itself, the challenge is really the optics that they're putting out there, because it's not just Ace Magashule that they have to deal with. There's also the question of other people that are in the party with regard to what has happened with the MK Council and the MK vets and the disbanding issue there. Questions around people like others in the party like Carl Nihes, others in the party like Tony Ngeni, and of course there are members in this party that are also basically, appearing before the Zondo Commission. So there's a number of interesting dynamics emerging there, and of course the other big elephant in the room here is the Zweli Mkhize question, and whether that is going to be a bigger challenge for President Ramaphosa in terms of what the SIU report produces and what kind of recommendations they make, and whether they see criminal charges as something that they will basically be pursuing. So this all creates a dynamic for the president and the executive to think about, because I think now the pot has become even more complicated, because it's not just Ace Magashule. We've got the Zweli Mkhize question, and then there are other underlying currents as well. There are questions around the deal with the floating Turkish energy ship. There's questions around the deputy minister around state security. I mean, there's all these different dynamics that are essentially circulating, and essentially it's kind of like a brew that's just continuously being stirred.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for your time this evening. That's Sanusha Naidu, political analyst.